Hey guys, Hayden here again from Alarm System Store, and today I thought it'd be kind of cool to do a video on the Neo touchscreens and how they differ from LCD keypads. We've had a few videos where I've showcased the touchscreen, using it, some functionality with it, programming with it, things like that, but I never did one that was specifically showing the differences here. So thought it'd be kind of cool to just kind of go over what all you can do with this and how customizable it is. So right off the bat, 7-inch touchscreen. You get all of the same information that you would on an LCD keypad. You got your arm status up here at the top, date and time, trouble menu. You can click on this to see zone status. There's a arming button, quick exit, output 2, which would deactivate and reset your smoke detectors if that's what you were using PGM2 for. So by default, it's got a lot set up for you already, but all of this can be adjusted and changed. These menus can be moved around, they can be changed with other menus, and we'll look at that here in a moment. But one thing that really sets this keypad apart from the LCD is its simplicity in how you get into menus. So like, for example, the trouble menu. If you guys keep up with our channel, you saw that I did a trouble menu explanation video, basically, where I showed how to go into the trouble menu, how to go through the different subsections and things like that. And that was with an LCD keypad. With this, you just get a little trouble icon over here. If you click that, it shows all of your trouble subsections. We got a battery trouble and service required. If they're highlighted, you can click on them, which means there is more information on the next page. So if I click that, it shows bell circuit and loss of clock. And for loss of clock there, if we click that, it asks for your master code, and you can go to put your time in. If we go back to the trouble menu, battery trouble, I don't have a battery hooked up, so that makes sense. But shows whatever troubles are there, and if it's something you can do on the keypad, like the time, it will let you go in and just do it straight from the keypad. Both the bell circuit and battery, I have to physically do something with the main board, so those aren't going to go away until I do. But as those clear, they'll just clear up, and whenever your system is trouble-free, this whole icon just disappears. So it's very obvious if you have troubles on the system. What I really want to go into though is the options that this keypad gives you. So over here you can see options there. If we click on that, it brings up a whole menu of things we can go into. Access codes, that's going to be your *5 menu or your user code menu. And if we go in there, that allows us to change the master and user codes so that we can customize who can come in and out of the home, things like that. It does make it a bit easier in that menu because you can name them. You can also use prox tags with this. So you see this little target icon down here in the bottom left. That means this keypad is prox tag compatible. So when you're enrolling users, if you have the prox tags, like this one here, you can swipe it there, and as you can see, it even through the plastic, it picked up the tag. I don't have it enrolled, so it gave me an invalid tag, but you can use these for user codes, or as users if you want to arm and disarm. So that's kind of neat. But if we go back into the options, we get an installer menu, user functions, chime disabled. If we click that, it enables the chime for this keypad. Partition status and keypad mode. And I'll just go down the list. We know what access codes is, so I'm not going to go into that. That one's pretty simple, just user codes or prox tags. Installer menu, it's going to ask you for your installer code, and now it gives you 3 more options. Keypad mode, which we saw a moment ago, I'll explain that here in a few. Keypad programming, and then label programming. So let's just click on keypad programming, and as you can see, right here is where we're going to be adjusting how the keypad and how this touchscreen looks. So you can change the background image if you plug in an SD card into this slot down here. That will allow you to upload images to it. There is a certain format you need to use to check the manual for that and make sure that they are formatted the correct way and using the correct resolution so that they fit properly. But if you want to change the background, you're welcome to. It only comes with that default one though, so you do have to add them to get any different ones. If we go into home functions here, and we can see there's a photos option, and that changes the, at the bottom right there's an icon that shows photos. you can change that from being photos to keypad mode. So keypad mode allows you to basically pull up a keypad and like an LCD keypad, the button layout on this touch screen. And we'll do that in a minute, so you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically it changes that button from a photos option to a keypad mode option, so you can go to keypad mode a little bit quicker. We're not going to change that for right now. There's also firmware upgrades. So for these touchscreens, on DSC's website, occasionally they upload firmware updates for these, and because of the SD card functionality that this touchscreen has, you can do firmware upgrades straight to the keypad. So you would plug in the SD card with that firmware file, and then click the firmware upgrade, and then it would do the upgrade pulling it from the SD card. There's also an options button here, and this allows us to turn on extra power. So extra power mode basically brightens the screen, but overall it just kind of makes the keypad draw more power. So if you only have one touch screen, you're welcome to turn on extra power mode if you want to. The manual explains it a bit better than I did, but it's very rare that anybody turns this on that I know of, so I'm not going to cover too much about it. We'll go back to the installer programming menu and go to label programming now. Now this is a huge change over LCD keypads. So when you go into label programming, it gives you a bunch of different options here. So you can see partitions, zones, outputs, fire zone, alarm while armed, failed to arm. So this menu allows you to change the labels for any of these given options. So if you wanted to name your partitions, you could do that. Instead of being partition 1 and partition 2, you could say main house, outbuilding. That way you know exactly what it's talking about. You don't have to remember which partition's which. Other than that, we can also change the zone labels, and this is where it is a huge help, especially if you have a lot of zones, because if you've ever done label programming on an LCD keypad, it's not hard by any means, it's just time consuming. What this allows you to do is click on zone 1. It's a little bit slow in these menus, but it does work just fine. But basically, it allows you to type in, using a full keyboard, your labels. So, as you can see, I type motion living room there. And if we wanted to type more, it just gives the whole keypad layout for that. Shift and caps are over here. There's also a character map as well. So going back to what else we can label, there's outputs here, and that's covering your PGMs basically. So command output 1 is going to be PGM 1 if we set it up for command output. PGM 2 is going to be command output 2, and you can play around with the PGM settings and create a 3 and 4 by using like a keypad, or there are other boards like the 2208 and the 2204. Those are, one's a power supply, one's a PGM board. Basically allows you to add more outputs to the system, and you can set those up as command outputs if you wanted to. People don't do this a whole lot anymore, but back when hardwiring everything was very common, you could basically set up a relay that would trigger your garage door, for example. So if you need to close your garage door at night, instead of opening the garage, letting the cold air in, click command output 3, and that would give you, that would send a command to a relay that operates the garage door. So like I said, not super common anymore, but the functionality is still there if you want to explore it. And this menu in particular allows you to name that. So if we set up PGM 1 or command output 1 to trigger the garage door, we could come in here and rename it garage door. And that's not how you spell garage door. That's not it either. Why am I clicking the wrong button? Name it garage door, click save, and now command output 1 is called garage door. And that way, if you're ever going to close the garage door at night, you pull up your outputs, click on garage door, it's going to close or open that door. Command output 2 is generally used for 2-wire smoke detectors if you have them on your system, so you could rename that smoke detectors. And it also gives you the option to label all 8 partitions worth of outputs. Same for zones. Even if the zone isn't on the same partition that this keypad is, you can find that zone and still label it from this keypad. So if you're partitioning your system, I would recommend using the touchscreen for the majority of the programming because it's much better about partitions than an LCD keypad is. So, all right, so next we have user functions. We need to put in our master code this time. And this is where you get basically your *6 menu. So you get your date and time access, event buffer access, system test, auto arm time and control, and keypad configuration. There's also some additional things you can set up here as well. Now, most of these options you're not going to have the capability to access right off the bat, like the DLS option there, SMS programming, and user call-up. All of those are tied to additional equipment you would need, or in DLS's case, it is software from DSC that you need to be able to access that. Really, there's not a whole lot to be said about them, but if for example, if you have a communicator that offers the SMS functionality, which I'm not even sure which one does, but you could use the touchscreen to set that up. User call-up goes along with the SMS programming as well, so you won't really have much access to it without using that particular equipment. The walk test, late to open, and late to open time. The walk test can be useful to an extent, although I do really recommend doing full tests, essentially setting the system off by triggering those zones. And that's just a much more solid way of testing, and it guarantees from start to finish that that sensor is doing exactly as it should. Late to open and late to open time, those are both tied to generally more commercial setups, so you can be notified if the alarm system was disarmed at the wrong time. But overall, most of the options that you're going to be looking at in this section are going to be in the top menu. Now going back into here, I want to show one more option under keypad configuration. So keypad configuration gives you a few more options here. You get display options that shows your brightness, clock mode, blank mode, photo mode, and off mode. So all of these do different little things. You can read the user manual for this to see exactly what those are. Change the blank mode after time. You can change the brightness of the keypad. Under buzzer control, you get a volume level slider, so you can slide that back and forth so you can set the volume. A picture frame, so anytime your pictures are, like I was saying, if you put pictures on here that are going to be a screensaver, you can set those up for a certain amount of time they stay on the screen, and how long it does the screensaver before it just closes out and goes to a blank screen. Calibration, that is for if your touchscreen doesn't seem to be pushing on the right locations, like if you click here and it's pushing over here, you can come in here and calibrate it. So you're going to push on the little pluses and you hold it down for 2 seconds on each plus. And after you've done that and release, then it moves the plus to another point on the screen. You got to do all 4 corners, and then 1 in the middle. And when you're done, hopefully your touchscreen will be a little bit more responsive and push where it needs to push. Don't know why it continues to back me out. It's so quick. I wish you could change that aspect. That is one thing I don't know how to change or if can be changed. The next option here, though, is the clock mode, and that is essentially a screensaver type mode. So if you click on it, it brings up a blank screen, turns on the screensaver, and shows the time. And when you click on it, it basically cancels the screensaver and you go back to the main menu. So that's just one way you can activate it. Clock mode can be turned on from those display options as the default screensaver if you want, though. Also from this menu, there's a clean mode where it basically turns the screen off for I think it's 30 seconds, but it allows you to wipe the screen off and it's not going to respond to any prompts from you touching the screen. So I'll fast forward through this so that we don't have to sit here the whole 30 seconds. All right, and for the last option under keypad configuration, you can change the home screen to be either classic or contemporary. And I've never actually turned this on, so I kind of want to see what it looks like. Okay, so changed it quite a bit. Basically, we have a radial set of icons instead of the more rectangular setup that it was before. I'm not sure which one I like better. I kind of think this is pretty cool, but that's up to you guys. You can choose whichever option you want. And going back in, I'm going to reset that real quick, and then we'll go to the next menu, which is the partition status. Chime over here, that's just going to turn on or off the chime. If I click that, it'll change it to chime enabled. So it's not really a menu, it's just kind of an option. Partition status though, this is a huge one for systems that use partitions. Touchscreens are amazing for partitioning, and if you watched our partitions video, you saw what I was talking about. It gives you access to all 8 partitions that are available on the DSC Neo right from the touchscreen. Doesn't matter how this keypad's assigned, what partition it's assigned to, or what is on those other partitions. If I had a secondary partition, using this menu, I would be able to see the status of the different partitions. As you can see there, partition 1 shows not ready. But if you click on one of those, it opens up the actual partition that you click on. So up there at the top, you can see it shows partition 1 and shows disarm status and all that. Can't do anything with it because the system is not ready to arm, but if you did have additional partitions, you could swap between the partitions and arm them separately through this touchscreen. So that's pretty nice. And now finally, we're going to get into keypad mode. So keypad mode basically just brings up an LCD keypad on this touchscreen. And I always get this question whenever talking about touchscreens. This keypad doesn't change the way you program the system because you're going to use this keypad mode to do it. So as you saw, nowhere else was there an option to go into system programming. Now that is only done by pressing *8 plus your installer code when you're in keypad mode. And that's the same as if you were on an LCD. So just keep in mind that programming will still be done using the standard keypad method, as it were. Most of the programming will be done through here. That's where you set up your zones and most of that functionality. The only thing you do get using this keypad programming-wise is the labels that it offers. Or the label format, I guess. So you can go into that installer menu, and once you type in your installer code, you get your label programming there. Keypad programming too, but there are different options for keypad programming in the actual system programming, so that's not really changing a whole lot there. Mainly just labels is what you get to access programming wise using these. And the last thing you get, instead of function keys for fire and burglary, medical, emergency, panic, things like that, over here it gives you a button called emergency and allows you to pick one of the 3 options. So it's a little bit easier to use rather than using the function keys. Normally you would have to hold 2 function keys. Basically there's a left and a right button for each command. You would hold those down for 2 seconds and that's what would set that alarm off. With this, you click that and then you hold that button down for 2 seconds and it's going to set the alarm off accordingly. Other than that, there's nothing really game-changing about this keypad, I guess, but it does have a lot of extra functionality that can make your life a lot easier, especially when setting up the system, like the label programming, partition programming, all that, where you can change the names of stuff, make it very easy to understand what you're looking at, what you're dealing with. This video is going to be a bit short, but I hope it was informative enough to help those of you that have questions on whether you should get the touchscreen for the Neo or not. This keypad is not cheap by any means, but you do get quite a bit of functionality and it makes things look a lot nicer overall. So If you're interested or you potentially have more questions, by all means, reach out to us at alarmsystemstore.com or just check it out on our website. We have all the manuals there. You can read through it, see if it's something for you. Otherwise, that's going to do it for me, and I will catch you guys on the next one.